So these two here are paintings that I made in the very early 80s, late 70s. And as you can see, they're quite heavily painted, and the process is called impasto, where you build up layers of paint. And these two paintings were started at the same time, but they've got sort of different outcomes. This one's more a landscape area with very thick areas of paint. This one, a figure emerges from it. And later that will become an inspiration for a series of prints, collagraphs and etchings that I did. The layers are very much inspired by an artist called Frank Auerbach, who was very prominent in the late 70s, early 80s. And more recently, people know Lucian Freud's work and someone called Leon Kossoff. So this is a colograph I made in 1987. I was lucky enough to do a fellowship in printing at the Art College in Cheltenham. And I learnt about a process called collagraphs, which I'd never experienced before. And basically all they are is cardboard, and then you put materials on them that you can then use for inking up and printing. And I've used sand here, something called carborundum sand, which you clean off lithographic plates from. The image, of course, is called Renswarren Man, and it's a peat bog figure. And I was sort of investigating peat bog images. Just to show you, it's actually reversed. So when you print, this head is on this side and the feet are on that side. But you ink it up with printing ink and coloured inks, and then you wipe off the surface, so you get your light areas like that here, and then I printed on large presses at the Art College. So these are two paintings which are diptychs, which are two paintings put together, and obviously a triptych is three. This one was done in 2017, and it was a series I did called Searching for Atlantis, which is a lost city that in ancient times sort of disappeared, and it became a starting point for a series of paintings I did. Again, I use sand and the texture a lot in my paintings. These both have that, and I've also cut out from hardboard shapes which sometimes have actually stuck onto the images, like here. These are stuck on, so they give that sort of physical presence to them. So this was based on the island of Atlantis, or the city of Atlantis, and in fact it's got a little boat on it, and the series I put a boat on every one of them to sort of give it some continuity. These are more contemporary. These were last year, and there's a lot of issue about plastic and disposing plastic, and a lot, where the plastic has been found in oceans and sea. So this is called Plastic Sea Running Dodo, and that dodo is obviously a bird that is extinct. But if you watch Jurassic Park, sometimes they take the DNA and they can recreate the animal, and that's what I've sort of done here with my running dodo. Again, there's some physical shapes in there which remind one of the sea. Okay, so this is a lockdown painting, which was inspired really through finding this piece of wood with the bent nails on it. and the woodworm, which, you know, reminded me of a sort of the idea of a virus. And obviously, you know, it's quite frightening, the current situation. So I also had this canvas which was in the background, and I put some wood on the background to allow me to nail it to the canvas. Underneath, I was going to paint the barn itself in the background, but in the end, I've got some old photographs of my daughter and wife riding, and they're disintegrating because of the water and whatever. They're very old photographs, and I was sort of quite inspired by the colours and the texture of them. That this has got texture like sand and PVA, and I use those as the background to the image. And then of course, you know, a symbol of the pandemic is wearing masks for our protection. So I've strung up some masks. So an artist that inspired me with this is someone called Robert Rauschenberg, who used to go for a walk in the 60s in New York round a block, and whatever he found, he would then turn that into a painting. And that's what I've tried to do with this piece of work. These are the latest paintings I've done, and it's a sort of refinement of a process I've been developing over the last couple of years, where I use very heavy brushes which have got distinct brush marks, and I use the brush marks first as a background, and then I've used glazes on top. Now, glaze is a very transparent layer of paint where you can see through, and when I painted the glazes on, the brush marks are revealed through them. So to start with, they're sort of watercolour powder with a mixture of, you know, different mediums to paint it on. And then I've used oil paints over the top to articulate the spaces, I call it. And these are the most recent paintings I've done. Obviously I've wiped it to give it direction. And here I've even put trees in, and these are sort of inspired by visits to St. Lucia and the Caribbean. There was a series on, I think it was called Art Club or something, which was coordinated by Grayson Perry, and I thought it was a great, you know, sort of look at people's reactions to the pandemic and the virus itself. So what I was doing, I was working on this image which looked like a Chinese dragon, and obviously it's supposed to have originated in China. So I was using my process, but I looked at an artist called Hokusai, who is actually Japanese, but he'd done lots of Chinese and dragons and images like that. And Grayson Perry did a series with his cat in it, and I've got a cat, and that's my sort of image of a cat. So this is called COVID-19 Dragon Meets the Cat, and it's my sort of way of looking at the issue of the COVID dragon and pandemic.